Short intro, much better.
See, we are walking the talk.
A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about intros and how they're shorter and all that kind of stuff. And we told you then that we would be making it shorter, and we are true to our words. So I like it way better. And it doesn't take us long to load, so that makes it even happier.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yay. So we've been talking the last few weeks about trends and what's going on in the world. We talked last week about personal branding. We've talked about fall trends in regards to 2024. We're going to shift and we're going to talk about a different type of trend today. And the reason we're choosing this topic is because one of the brands that's been around for a very long time. It is the 10th anniversary. Actually, yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the One Red Lipstick Live.
Yay.
I can't believe it was 10 years ago. It literally popped into my feed, and I literally texted Fam, like, we've got to talk about this because a lot of people haven't seen those events that have been following us.
Yeah.
What was how did One Red Lipstick originate? And it started as a book, and then we started doing live events, which is what is going to lead into what we're talking about today, which is going to be speaking, public speaking, and what's changed in regards to that, because a lot's changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and it actually started as a documentary.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one.
And it was started by my daughter, Spencer, and it really came into play when all this, she's hanging around all of us, all this stuff, she'd hear all of us talking about the problems and everything we were going through. And she didn't understand why, we always looked so good on stage and all this stuff. And then in the background, she'd hear about all the challenges. And she said, that's what you really need to share. You need to tell people how challenging things are, and not just about, fabulous Instagram life where everything's perfect, because it isn't. So, and what came to play basically was when her dad got sick, and I was in the hospital. We didn't know if he was going to make it. I was in the hospital for, I don't know how long now, 6 weeks with him. And I would sit in the chair. I never left. And I would pull my hair back and put on my red lipstick. And, that was the start of the phrase, because it was basically put on your red lipstick and then you're ready to deal with anything the world throws your way. So she did a documentary, and if you go to One Red Lipstick, you can watch it still.
Yep.
And we did a book, and it was about women's stories and their challenges to success. So it wasn't about how they made it to success. It was about all the stuff that they had to deal with in order to live a fairly successful life and get through the challenges. So that book is still out there as well. You can go ahead and grab a copy of that. And then we started doing these lives. And what we would do is we'd bring up women in the book and out of the book, and we wanted them to share their stories so that the younger generation could understand that it isn't what you see on Instagram and Facebook. It is far more challenging than that, and everyone has a story, and that was the key to it.
Well, and I think what ended up happening too was we sort of would glaze over, I guess, we glaze over the, this is what happened, and then I'm fine.
Yes.
But we wouldn't really tell sort of how we got here and why and all of that kind of stuff. So, and before some of the One Red Lipstick lives, before they would go up on stage, because a lot of times those were people's first time on stage and first time speaking and first time sort of being in front of a larger group, Faye would sort of go through her speaker training to the attendees, or to the speakers, so that they could just gain some tips, be a little bit more confident on stage, that kind of stuff. So what has changed?
Lots changed. So speaking is very different. I mean, we were very focused on storytelling, which is the important part, and break everything down. We put them through the Speakeasy formula. We broke everything down so they'd understand how to share it. It was work, though, right?
Absolutely.
And things are a little easier now. So, and a lot of things have changed. So one of the big ones, obviously, and the one we talk about all the time, is AI and automation.
I don't think we mention AI.
So AI is massive in the speaking world. Why? Because it will help you not only formulate your speech, but it'll help you with visual aids. It'll help you practice your speaking. It'll tell you what you should change to make it more interesting or compelling. It will help you. You can ask AI as you're doing your speech, what kind of questions do you think people will ask us? And it will tell you, right?
Yeah.
It'll tell you what to do in terms of pacing and tone and things that we learned through speaking training. It does not, just so you understand, can you learn to speak just on AI? Sure. But it doesn't, but I mean, the truth is, if you can get in some speaker training, it makes a difference because it really tells you, it teaches you to understand how to structure things and how to make sure that you are more interesting when you speak.
Because I think AI can take you to a certain degree, right? It can help you structure your speech. It can help you outline. It can help you have ideas, that kind of stuff. But in regards to the delivery, AI can't really critique. And the way that you teach your speakeasy formula, it helped me. It helped a lot of people to do it without notes. Right. So yes, you can have AI do your notes. Absolutely. You can put that into a teleprompter. No problem. But if you're on stage and the technology breaks down, sometimes that's not going to work. So you do need to work on the delivery, which is what
so the formula really is about learning how to speak on stage or on camera or whatever without notes, without memorization, without slides, right? So that you are very comfortable in any situation being able to speak. But, you know, again, with the advent of AI, that's only helping you get started, because the hardest part about speaking is getting started on what you want to talk about.
And if anybody has been on stage and has had notes and has had slides and has had technology break, you know how valuable this is. And that's, I've had that situation. You've had that situation, right?
Lots of times.
Where it's like, oh, we can't get your presentation up, or, oh, we can't get your this to work or that to work. And you have to roll with it.
You should never ever think that you're going to have a crutch, right? That's what I said. I actually said that in yoga class the other day. I was talking to one of the teachers, and she, you know, they had some teachers bring in their notes, which is fine, like which pose to go into and all that stuff, which is great, but it's a crutch, right? So once you start really understanding your stuff, then you can go without it. So it's nothing wrong with it. If you need it, it's fine. But you know, the reason I try to teach without it is what happens if you do have it written and it blows away, right?
My dog ate my homework.
You forgot, or you just like left it in the other room or something. So you need to have some type of semblance of what I can do. And most people do. You just like to have that crutch beside you. So we're trying to take that away.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the, I guess, newer trends when it comes to speaking, and we're facing that right now because we have a speaking engagement coming up where we're speaking to sort of a larger group of people in person. So it's a hybrid event. Right? So you have half your people who are live in front of you, and then the other half or more virtual.
Right.
So speaking has changed in that regard as well, because not only are you sort of focused on your delivery and your presentation and all of that kind of stuff, now you have to add in how are you going to engage the people on the online piece, and what are they going to do so that they feel part of it, and also engage people for the in-person, especially if there's sort of a workshop part of it, or, you know, some sort of interaction that they need to do as part of your presentation. What are you going to do to engage both groups?
Yeah, it's hard. It's not easy because old school, we used to teach very differently. We still keep the same in terms of tone and engagement. Like we're talking to you right now, like we're talking to an entire group in front of us. We don't change that because that's what you want to come across.
Right.
But it is, what changes more when you're doing hybrid is you have to remember about the filming, where the camera is, you know, like, are you close enough so that someone is engaged or not? And that's really tricky. So it's really is trial and error a little bit to understand what the best solution is. But if you're too far away from the camera, you guys you've seen it, right? It's not enticing. If you watch, for example, a comedy special on Netflix, for example, when the camera's close up, you feel engaged, right? Yeah. And then when they pan back to the audience, you feel disengaged because it's so far away. So you have to make sure that you try to bridge that and keep that flow of the voice and the tone going at the same time.
And that's also from the organizer perspective, and sort of the behind the scenes to make sure, because sometimes it sounds really easy to run an event that's like, oh, we'll just have some, a few people live and then we'll have people online. And I did one where it wasn't facilitated very well. So the people who were online just really didn't feel, but I couldn't see them.
Yeah.
And that's the other piece, right? Like I can just imagine, the hybrid event where you have a monitor and you can kind of see the other attendees. At least you feel like they're there and they feel like they're part of the event versus just a camera that they're just doing the live feed. You just feel like you're watching and you're not really engaged. So that's another way to bring the hybrid event together.
Yeah, and that comes down to the speaker, right? We have to remember that we have hundreds and thousands of people listening to us right now, even though you're not in front of us. So those are the type of things that you really have to keep in mind.
We can get closer. We can get further away.
The next point that I love to talk about, because it is, everybody knows, is that there is no attention span anymore from anyone, right? Yeah. And so
if you're still with us, awesome.
So that's point number 2. And the reason we talk in points is to keep you with us as we go along. So shorter attention spans. Why? Because, shorts, TikTok, Reels, right? And so now it's like you have to get to the point very quickly in order for somebody to understand. So we said at the beginning of this what we're talking about, right? We're talking about how speaking has changed. So if you're interested in that, you're coming along with us. But if we didn't tell you at the top, you might not be interested.
Don't you love it when people just start talking and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, you're waiting for the information, you're waiting for what they're going to talk about, you're waiting for context.
Yeah.
It's like, do I want to watch this? And then halfway through, you realize, like, okay, well, now I'm going to dive in. And I find that a lot, both with speaking, both with shorter videos, podcasts, whatever medium you want. I find a lot of people drag out that this is what we're going to talk about. So jump to the point, because if you're interested, you'll stay. But again, that micro content, right? So give it to them in a very short way. We've talked about this in regards to videos as well, shorter videos, shorter content. And think about that when you're public speaking, right? Are you going to stand on a stage and deliver a 45-minute to an hour presentation? Well, keep it moving, right? It's not just standing there on a mic. I don't think you can keep their attention as long.
No, and you have to think about it just like everyone watches social media, like they watch Netflix, like everything else. It's very fast, it's efficient, and it's exactly what they want to watch. Nobody waits for anything anymore, including us. We just get right to it. We want the answer. We go to the answer. How many of you go to YouTube to find how to do something, and you find yourself fast forwarding until you get to the part where you really need, because you don't want to listen to the intro. You're not interested, right?
Timestamps. Thank you, YouTube, for timestamps.
That's number 2. Number 3, which is interesting, because we always talk about authenticity and vulnerability and all that stuff, but now, because of AI, it's getting more and more and more important. You have to be relatable. Why? Because now you have to, make sure, distinguish yourself between you and that AI bot that's going to look exactly like you in some realms, right? So you have to make somebody understand why they will relate to you, understand that, your stuff isn't perfect. And if you are perfect, what's going to happen? They're going to immediately think you are an AI.
Yeah, exactly. You're not a robot. You have feelings. And I think we were ahead of the curve when it came to One Red Lipstick, like we mentioned right in the beginning, about sharing those stories. And those stories, I think what made them perfect was how imperfect they were. Yeah. Right? They were vulnerable. They were authentic. And I think people want to see that because they see so much of a polished person on video and social media that when they see you in person, you can break down some of those barriers and you don't have to be perfect on stage any longer. I think before, like that, polished, memorized TED Talk is starting to maybe go away a little bit, and they want to see some of that vulnerability and they want to see the real person. So I don't think you have to act like a robot.
No, the old time speaker training, which is why we did our speaker training, why I developed the Speakeasy formula, was because I've been through all of them and they are not fun and they're not engaging, but that's how corporate America taught everyone to speak. So that's completely changed. Yeah. It is not a one-directional talk anymore. It is really about engaging the audience, which is number 4.
Good lead-in. Yeah. So like we talked about before, as it related back to that sort of hybrid event, I think audiences want that interactivity. They want to feel like they're connected to you. They don't just want to stand and watch you speak, XYZ, and then wait, okay, then to the end, like that sort of typical presentation, Q&A, that kind of stuff. They want to be part of it. They want that conversational style versus just that one-way monologue like you would see on the late night talk shows where you can't interact with it, right? Again, they want to get to know you. It all brings into leading you through that vulnerability, being real, but have a conversation with the audience and get them involved so that it's not just a one-way conversation.
And I just want to make a point on the Q&A piece, because a lot of us who have gone into speaking always wrote down, just like I had said, you can ask Chachi for some suggested Q&As, right? And we wrote down and we tried to think of all the questions that we would be asked. But now I would prefer to teach people to not try to have all those answers. Instead, answer as you see fit when the question comes up, because I don't want that rehearsed, and things have changed. So if you set up a Q&A for your program that ran 2 years ago, it's probably not the same answer. And so don't worry about memorizing that answer. Just open the floor and say, what do you guys want to talk about? What questions do you have for me? And answer truthfully.
And I also like the questions in the middle of the presentation.
Yeah.
I like being able to kind of go, ask me anything, anytime. And because they want to have their question answered when you are talking about that topic, because they may forget or you may cover it. But it's just good to know that they have the opportunity to ask those questions and you can answer it in real time as opposed to waiting till the end. I just think it helps flow and it makes them feel like they're part of it. For sure.
So another big trend for the years ahead, and you guys all know this, you see it everywhere, which is diversity and inclusivity. For me, it's really, I like to talk about it in terms of a global audience. So you are, especially if you're online, you're getting people from all over the world, different cultures, different time zones, different, aspects of humor, everything else. So you have to be aware that you're not just talking to that silo group that you live beside that are very, much the same as your community, what you have to offer. So you really need to think about, okay, if I'm talking to somebody and it's a 7 p.m. Talk in North America, it is, midnight somewhere else. They might be ready to go to sleep. Those are the kind of little cues you have to understand. And culturally, are there differences in what you say? Do they understand what you're talking about? So we've always learned know your audience, but now it's like know your global audience. It's a little different. Like as Stacy said, we're doing a workshop that will be a hybrid, so there will be virtual attendees as well. We don't know who's attending virtually. So we have to sit down with the organizer and go, where are these people from? And, when are they going to be watching it so that we understand, because we want to be open to any differences.
And just understanding, some of your inside jokes in your own sort of world doesn't necessarily work. Right. So think about who you're talking to, but you're right. In regards to timing, that's a great one, because I know we'll say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we don't know.
What we say.
We don't know when or where people are going to be watching from.
And don't you find sometimes I know, when you're really tired or it's first thing in the morning and you watch something and somebody's drinking a wine and you're like just wanting coffee and their humor isn't getting to you because you're like, I'm not in that like wine 7 p.m. time frame. I just want a coffee and get to work. So, make sure that you understand all that.
Exactly. Number 6, in regards to a lot of the speaking stuff, is storytelling, but data-driven storytelling. So bringing in those visuals, bringing in those data. But I remember one time going to a presentation and literally something had changed on my way.
Yeah.
So I had to quickly in my car swap out a slide because I wanted to be current with the most current information. So it was real time as opposed to something that happened a week ago.
Don't you hate when you see a speaker and they reference something that isn't happening anymore?
And you're like, that's not true.
Like because you want to go, hey, wait a minute, that changed.
Did you watch the news last night?
So be very, very conscious of it. If you are speaking of something, we're talking right now about trends in speaking. We teach speaking every month of every year for the last, 20 years. So the fact that we need to be on top of it, and we're telling you the trends. Why? Because we need to be on top of the trends to make sure anything that's changed, we're very well aware of.
Exactly. And that conferences are changing, right? Again, like we said right in the beginning, that hybrid has changed from even 4 years ago, or how long ago was COVID? 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Things changed because now, people want to be online more, but they also want that engagement. So where does that middle ground come in?
And it's funny because when you're talking about that, things have changed. What's interesting to me is number 7, which we want to talk about, which is including mental health and well-being focus in everything, in your speeches. It is not anymore a hush hush. I don't want to tell.
Yeah.
People can talk about their struggles or what they do or what they need to do and how they manage their health and how that incorporates into their business. We at Mastermind City in our hub, we have very specific courses in order to help your personal development in stress management, meditation, life sciences, those type of things is equally as important. So you no longer have to hide as a speaker and pretend that everything's great. You can actually say, this is what's been going on. And really, we were, again, ahead of a curve in One Red. We were talking about that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's really, really important not to hide anymore.
Well, and it's really interesting because I'm seeing that more and more of people incorporating sort of their story. So I know this one social media manager, she's very vocal on social media, and she's recently sort of started telling her story about depression and anxiety. Good for her because she's bringing awareness to that, but it's a reality of what she deals with on a regular basis. And she also teaches how she gets through that, how she deals with that on a daily basis. How does that affect her business, her mental health, her children, her, interaction when she's networking, like all of those pieces, it's all one now.
But
right?
Can I stress, do not wallow.
No.
Do not feel sorry for yourself. Do not look for sympathy. That is not why you're sharing your story. No. And if that's what you're looking for, go to a therapist.
That's a different thing. Right? That's a different thing. For me, it was just more of the reality of it and the incorporating of this is what I'm doing and this is why. And that she didn't feel like she needed to kind of present this perfect persona. And that just, again, brings in the whole piece that we talked about before about vulnerability and authenticity when you're speaking on stage, of sharing your story and being part of that.
Yeah. So number 8, a big one, big one is sustainability, environmental issues. Those topics are always going to come up in any speaking. So if what you're talking about has an impact on it, you want to go ahead and talk about it, which there's nothing wrong with it. And then on the same note on that, when you're a speaker, you used to, in the old days, used to give everybody handouts, right? Handouts, workshop notes, all this kind of stuff. Now, it's kind of frowned upon. You don't want to use paper.
Yep,
so you want to be able to say, click this link and you can get the electronic version, or pull it up on your phone or your iPad, or take some electronic notes. But try to think of ways that people immediately would go, I don't like the fact that they're handing out 40 pages that no one's ever going to do anything with except throw out, right? So this way, at least if somebody wants your information or they want a workbook or whatever, they can go ahead and do it as they see fit. If they want to print it, that's up to them.
Yeah, or downloads. I love digital documents. I love when the organizer kind of says, if you want to see the workbook or the handout, here's the way to download it. When we do our presentations, we do not print tons of handouts. Again, here's the link. You can go and follow along. If you're online or if you're in person, we hand it out ahead of time. And that way they have it ready if they want that physical copy. That's, again, like I said, that's their choice.
I'm very conscious about letting the audience know, don't take notes. I will give you the notes electronically. Listen instead. Listen to what I'm talking about. Get your mind engaged. Everything that I'm talking about will be there for you afterwards. And the same thing is why, sometimes like podcasts can have the entire transcription below it, right? Because you're not really listening to all of it sometimes, but then you're like, oh, I missed that part. I wonder what they said. So you can go ahead and look at the transcription afterwards and try to focus on what they're saying instead.
Yeah, exactly. So if there's any links to follow-up material, I know podcast, that's been a great one, the transcription, because it's like, oh, I'll put that in the show notes, and sometimes it's forgotten and all of that kind of stuff. But then sometimes when you're doing a presentation, it's like, oh, you know what, I'm giving you that link already, so you don't have to worry about that. And like you said, you can absolutely stay engaged, which is huge. So, and then number 9 is, we've talked a lot about this when it comes to sort of branding in your business, but we do have to mention it here when it comes to speaking as well, which is be the expert, right? No longer are you going to be that sort of bigger motivational speaker where you're going to talk about absolutely everything. We were brought in to different speaking engagement because we have an expertise in a specific area, not because we have knowledge about absolutely everything.
Right. Well, we do have knowledge about everything, but that's not why you. So what you really want to do is focus. You know, what you learn in the speaker training and Speakeasy formula is to understand what your formula is, what you're good at, right? And if you have 3 killer keynotes, that's all we really want you to have. We want you to have 3 that you are known for, right? That people will hire you for, and they will call you up as a guest, because these are the 3 things. Doesn't mean you can't talk about other stuff. You can. But what we want is people to understand, you know, oh, she's an expert in this. Yeah. And that's all we need to know. So,
or the who you're talking to.
Right.
We have this group of people that I know you are an expert in. So can you come and talk to this particular group because you are, you know, sort of that niched in regards to the audience. So either way,
right,
I think that really works as well.
Yeah. And finally, number 10. 10 is a tricky one because it's all about crisis communication and sensitivity. What does that mean? It really is understanding, you know, we just said you have to know what's changing in the marketplace. You have to know what's happening in the world, because if you don't know what's happening in the world, if you missed the pandemic, if you just happen to be asleep, right, or any climate disasters right now, there's a giant hurricane barreling towards Florida. I don't know if it hit yet or not. So that's been happening for a couple of weeks. There was a very bad one that just happened, and you have to be sensitive to that as you're talking. Because there was one thing that it was interesting. I don't know if you saw it on TikTok, but there was a very bad hurricane, as we all know, and 250 people had died. I don't know if the number is bigger now. And this one person went on TikTok whining that their Airbnb got canceled in that area and they weren't going to get a refund. Well, that house doesn't even exist and the owner might not even be alive. And like, talk about no sensitivity, like they're missing that sensitivity chip. You need to understand what the heck's going on before you open your mouth and say something really, really stupid. Right? That's just really stupid to worry about that.
And to be honest, I've been in a situation where literally the news had hit and I had a presentation sort of that night and somebody asked a question because it related to the topic.
Yeah.
Oh, like, so are you aware of this and how would you do it knowing this information? And thank goodness at the time I knew what was going on, but if I didn't, that would have been a big problem. So you do need to understand, you do need to watch the news, you do need to be on top of that, because I guarantee you your audience is.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, I mean, I don't even want to, it just, when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. So many people got up there and trashed and did a bunch of, you'll see if you guys go to TikTok, you'll see it. But it was really interesting. So it's really important to keep all those things in mind. I mean, we talked that it's important to understand the traditional skills and how to speak, how to use intonation, how to use no memorization, no slides, understanding your framework, understanding what your points are, what to talk about. But at the same time, you need to adapt.
And understand technology and what's going on that side, and how can you incorporate all the different things into your presentation. So not only being prepared if technology dies, but also being prepared when technology works. And what does that look like in the environment in which you're speaking now, not just online. We didn't even go into online only.
Yeah.
Right. And that's very popular. And we've done that quite a bit since the pandemic. I remember I did a lot of in person. Now we've done a lot of online presentations. So now that's why I think that hybrid is coming back. So
those are our top 10, and that's the trends going into 2025. Really important. You're going to be able to access this on our LinkedIn newsletter, and we'll put it in everywhere. You'll see us everywhere. But absolutely, and there'll be a transcript under this on our YouTube channel. So make sure that you understand those things. If you're going after speaking gigs, or you happen to have one coming up, make sure that you kind of review the list and go, oh, am I good on all this? Check, or am I going from my list from 2023, which is way too old right now.
So 2023.
So please check it out. Make sure you understand what's going on.
Awesome.